great day in America. I'm headed down to the floor to confirm Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson to the United States Supreme Court. What a great day.
Consider this moment in history. When the Supreme Court first met in this building in February of 1801, there were 1 million slaves in this nation, a nation of 5 million people. This very building was built with the labor of enslaved people. And at the time the court met, neither black Americans nor white women had a constitutionally guaranteed right to vote. Women had no place in that first Supreme Court chamber, and black women would only enter to clean it in the dark of the night.
Mr. Scott of South Carolina. Mr. Scott of South Carolina, no. Mrs. Shaheen.
Mr. President, I rise today to express my joy in voting to confirm Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Under the previous order, all post-cloture time has expired. The question occurs on the nomination of Ketanji Brown Jackson of the District of Columbia to be an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States.
I ask for the yeas and nays.
Is there a sufficient second? There is, and certainly appears to be, a sufficient second. The clerk will call the roll. On this vote, the yeas are 53, the nays are 47, and this nomination is confirmed.
But it is the stand you take during times of controversy and challenge. She weathered the controversy. She weathered the challenge. And so, America, we say thank you.
And there it is. Let it be known. It is Friday, April 8th, 2022. And this morning we're talking history on the Supreme Court. We're also talking history on the golf course and the rewriting of history at the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Lots happening today. So let's get into some of these headlines as we kick off this Friday morning with our chief correspondent, James Wright. Katrina Hamilton joins us from the Muslim Journal, and the best Capitol Hill reporter working, Lauren Burke of the Burke Files. Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
And I want to go right to Lauren. Lauren, you were there. We saw the images just now. But the first thing, and you can unpack everything else, but the first thing I wanted to throw out there, we saw Vice President Kamala Harris. Seems like there was a lot of pride, a proud moment, but a nervous moment for her.
Yeah, she seemed a little bit nervous. I mean, obviously, it was a pretty extraordinary thing to see the first Black vice president up there ushering in the first Black female member of the Supreme Court. It's pretty amazing, actually. And they're going to have another event at the White House today that I'm sure the vice president will be at. As you probably saw last week, there was a healthcare event where the first Black president of the United States, President Obama, was there with Kamala Harris, and that yielded some pretty historic photography as well. But it was a pretty amazing day. You could see from some of that footage, that press conference from the Congressional Black Caucus that happened right after the vote. Which is, to have a press conference right in front of the door of the U.S. Senate chamber is a pretty amazing thing within itself. And now, because there's 59 members of the Congressional Black Caucus, so many of them were in the chamber in the back. The House members do have floor privileges on the Senate floor. So, they're sitting in the seats in the back and watching everything. And it was a pretty amazing thing to watch. I was in the, press gallery, which is right above Vice President Harris, so right above her that you can't even really see her unless you really look over the ledge, and at any rate, I had my eyes trained on certain people, Tim Scott being one of them, just staring right at him.
Well, I'm sorry, but you gave us during our live broadcast of the confirmation yesterday afternoon, you gave us some great insight. Tell our viewers this morning about Tim Scott, how he voted and what he did after his vote, and tell us about Lindsey Graham and how he voted.
Yeah. Yeah. So the two of them, so this was a vote, obviously. What they do is the rest of the senators actually sit at their seats and vote from their seats, which is typically not how it's done. The way it's done is they usually walk into the chamber, raise their hand, go thumb up, thumb down, walk back out. All the senators are sitting down except three or two. One was Rand Paul, the other was Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham was in the back cloakroom. And so he's there, but he's not on the floor. And it might have been the case because, they do have a 2-week Easter recess. So in a little bit of fairness here, the members are looking to get out the door and get on flights, the House members and the senators. So what tends to happen is people change clothes. They're not dressed for the floor when you're on your last vote. However, all the other senators were dressed properly. 98 people could figure out how to be in proper attire at their desk. So what I saw from the gallery was that when Lindsey Graham's name came up in the roll, he opened the cloakroom door in the back. He stuck his arm out. You could see that it was him. So his face and his arm. You'd see that he was not dressed properly for the floor. And he put a thumbs down. Okay, so then he goes back into the cloakroom. Frankly, I think this is all passive aggressive behavior that is just, you just don't want to witness this particular history because you're dissatisfied. And then I find out later that Lindsey Graham is in the, Senate press gallery doing a press conference. So he in fact was dressed properly. And, Tim Scott, a few of the senators left right after they voted. Very few, though, like 2 or 3. I saw Bernie Sanders. He sort of left maybe 10 minutes after he voted, And Tim Scott was like one of the first people to leave. So he votes. He's sitting there. And where his name comes up in the roll is sort of funny because it's like Schumer and then Scott from Florida and then Tim Scott from South Carolina. So I'm just staring at him the whole time just to see. And he votes thumbs down, and the CBC members behind him all like, oh my goodness, this guy, right? So then they sort of were like, him again. Then he gets up and leaves about 5 minutes later. So he's like one of the first people to leave the chamber, I think, to evade the press, because all the press are in the press gallery or outside the chamber door where you saw that CBC press conference. That CBC press conference started with Chuck Schumer coming out first. He said something, hey, this is historic. And he went back in, then the CBC came out. So Tim Scott was Tim Scott. And I don't think anybody here is surprised at that.
Lauren was doing some old-fashioned journalism yesterday. She was, I'm in the hallway. I'm in the chamber. I'm on this corner. It was just fantastic. James, James is in Atlantic City right now. James,
nice. You're at the Alpha Phi Alpha?
Yes.
Yes, that's great. That's great.
James, I know James is our resident historian. James, I know there's a lot of significance to this moment, and I know that Katrina is going to weigh in on that too. But a lot of his, there's a lot of symbolism that happened there yesterday with the vice president, and it's going to be some more because the vice president is probably going to swear her in.
Right, exactly right. And you can see how these moments, your pictures that you get from this, the images you get from this are sort of long lasting. You guys, I'm sure you guys heard that Rand Paul was late for the vote. Nobody can understand that because I saw Rand Paul earlier, about an hour before that, doing a tour. So I don't know how you're late for a vote that everybody knows is at 1:45. It makes no sense. So they keep the roll open. And as you saw in that footage, the Republican side of the chamber is totally empty by the time Kamala Harris gets to say.
But there was something to that, though, right? The fact that the Republicans had left because there was another motion, but because they, as the vice president or someone said, happily did not have a quorum, they couldn't move forward.
I didn't see that part. I didn't see that part with the quorum.
Yeah, there was a motion to reconsider.
Oh my goodness! What they should have done to me is close the roll. Okay, so at 53, they should just close the roll. I don't know why they kept it open for Rand Paul, but you saw the footage though of Mitt Romney standing back there, lone clapping. When Kamala Harris finally, the vice president finally could say the final vote, and he just had one senator and other senators leaving. So these are the images, I guess, that the Republican Party wants to have embedded in everybody's head over a justice that was double Harvard and one of the most qualified people ever nominated to the Supreme Court.
Yeah. James, again, you're the historian here. Give us your view on this.
Well, while Lauren was doing her excellent work in the Capitol, outside of the Capitol, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and whatever else they have was just going crazy, chronicling the historic moment. And this is going to be good because in about 40 or 50 years, when some writer writes about Judge Jackson, writes a biography on her, they will have that information and all of the information about that. And I was proud to be an American because of that, because finally African American women are getting the respect that they're due. Still got a long way to go, but getting the respect that they're due, and particularly in the legal profession, because many Black female judges are excellent and thorough and do their jobs well. And the fact that now that you have one African American on the highest court in the land says that America is finally beginning to understand the importance of diversity.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's good to have Katrina Hamilton back with us. Katrina, I know you can give us a perspective on this. So we always have to ask, as a Black woman, what does this moment mean to you?
Well, I think it's amazing. I can speak from the lens of my 9-year-old, right? She was sitting there, and I have to say, and I probably will catch some flack for this, or slack, whatever it's called, but I am happy that we have someone that we do not have to share.
Oh boy.
Here come the comments, but I am so proud that this is someone that we can truly say is African American, of African descent. My child who is of African descent can look at her and say, wow, I want to be a judge one day. Instead of saying I want to be like Judge Judy and throw people in court for 100 years for speeding, she can look to Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson and say, I want to aspire to be like her. So I think that speaks volumes, right? The fact that we have a phenomenal Black woman who had to go through so much. I want to thank Senator Mitt Romney, Senator Murkowski, and Senator Collins for being what Tim Scott should have been, right? Because they can look at their children's children and say, I made a significant difference in history. We don't need to talk about Lindsey Graham. We don't need to talk about Mitch McConnell, because these people are who they are, and they will have to deal with someone who is higher than all of us at the end of the day. But the reality is, history was made. We don't have to share, and we can rejoice for years to come.
We listen. You're not ashamed of that perspective, and neither are we, Katrina. Thank you so much. I know that Katrina's not going to be with us too long. I'm told it is Ramadan, so we certainly respect that, and certainly so glad that you took the time out to join us this morning, Lauren. As Katrina brought out, the whole thing with history and Tim Scott. Does Tim Scott, does the Republicans themselves, other than the three aforementioned senators who voted in the affirmative, do they care that, as Katrina brought out, 30, 40 years from now, the history books are going to reflect the fact that they was against this historic nomination?
Well, I was trying to talk to Tim Scott about that exact very thing. It's one thing to say that, look, I'm voting against somebody for ideological disagreement, which I think would be a fine response if he would actually sit for a conversation on this vote. But what I think they've branded themselves, what I think the Republicans have now branded themselves as no qualification is good enough for this modern Republican Party, apparently, when you're voting against one of the most qualified jurists to be nominated for the Supreme Court. And if we go back to the Thurgood Marshall vote to make it even more embarrassing, and we find that there were certain people who were not particularly into Black people voting for Thurgood Marshall. I know Harry Byrd and them were voting against, but you had plenty of senators who were Republicans who they effectively voted to support Thurgood Marshall to the Supreme Court. And this is back was it 68?
Mm-hmm.
68. I mean, so how do you explain that if you're Tim Scott? I don't understand how you explain voting against somebody who's double Harvard, all right, who was on the sentencing commission, who was our only public defender to be on the court, who spoke pretty moderately. I mean, this idea that she's some left-leaning radical is nonsense. Anybody who looks at her cases. So I don't understand why they would want to be down in history on this vote. But it really does tell you about the modern Republican Party, that they've branded themselves as anti-Black, no matter what the details are. And the only Black people they like are Black people who hate other Black people. Candace Owens, Clarence Thomas. So if you're a Black person that hates other Black people and disadvantages other Black people, then the Republican Party loves you. They put up Herschel Walker, but that tells you what this is about. So I'm not understanding why anybody would want that vote to be in the negative, particularly when we know the history of other votes with Dixiecrats voting for, certain people. It's just embarrassing. So I don't know how to explain it.
We have a special program planned for Monday, very special edition of Let It Be Known, where we will discuss the history of the court, Black judges, Thurgood Marshall, Clarence Thomas, and of course, the history-making confirmation of Ketanji Brown Jackson. And we'll discuss all of that. I know Lauren has so much more she could tell us and will tell us. And we're always looking forward to that insight, always looking forward to James's thoughts and his historic mind. He takes us back to like the 16th century sometimes. So we appreciate that. Also this morning, as we segue, I thought this was interesting, Lauren and James. Alabama lawmakers on Tuesday advanced legislation that would alter the name of Selma's Edmund Pettus Bridge to honor those who were beaten on the bridge as they marched for civil rights in 1965. The Alabama Senate voted 23-3 for legislation that would change the official name to the Edmund W. Pettus Foot Soldiers Bridge. However, the lettering on the famous bridge would remain unaltered. The name Foot Soldiers would be on a separate sign that would include a silhouette of the marchers. The bill is called Healing History Act, and it now moves to the Alabama House of Representatives, who will be meeting shortly on this. But here's the interesting thing. For those who did not know, the bridge in 1940 was named after Edmund Pettus, who was a Confederate general and reputed Ku Klux Klan leader. James, I'll start with you on that.
Unacceptable. I don't know how anybody could accept that. That's unacceptable. Edmund Pettus, as you just pointed out, was a Confederate general who played a role in the Ku Klux Klan in Alabama. That adding foot soldiers is cosmetic. It's symbolic badly. That is unacceptable. Alabama can do better. That is unacceptable.
Yeah, Lauren, I'm surprised that we have not, and perhaps you can give us some more insight, that we have not heard cries to have that name changed. We've seen all of these Confederate statues being removed, all of this relic being removed. Why not this?
Because the bridge is known for John Lewis. Regardless of what name is on that bridge, when everybody hears about that bridge, they think about John Lewis and Bloody Sunday, and that really has overtaken anything else. I don't know why anybody would want to emblazon an unwieldy name with the very long word foot soldiers in it. I mean, just from a marketing standpoint there. I don't know why don't they just go all the way and just name it after John Lewis if they're going to do that? Just name it after John Lewis. Yeah. But really, it's already named after John Lewis because they have an annual event at the beginning of every year that just makes you think about John Lewis. And it doesn't matter whether he's not here anymore. That is going to continue. So it reminds me of what happened in Virginia with the Lee statue in Richmond. The Black mayor, who's the protege of Terry McAuliffe, LeVar Stoney, came up with the bright idea of putting a plaque at the bottom. First, they had a commission, so you had that fake moment. They wanted to put a plaque at the bottom of these Confederate statues saying something about, wow, this isn't as racist because there's a plaque there, at the bottom of this gigantic statue of Robert E. Lee. Well, you have to either do it or not do it. So either leave it alone or go all the way. So we'll see what happens. But I think that the thing, when we think about the bridge, is John Lewis. How you doing, Dr. Chavis?
Good morning, everybody.
And speaking of the foot soldiers, right? Hey,
Right.
Dr. Ting.
All right.
Well, I think I agree with Lauren. I think that history has already named the bridge.
Right.
And the local politics in Selma is phenomenal. And unfortunately, all African Americans in Selma are not on the same page about this. That's one problem. And then you have the state people in Alabama. On the one hand, it's a tourist attraction, so it brings money into the county, but on the other hand, they want to try to sanitize, what happened. There's in all of our places, even in Birmingham, if you're not careful, there's this sanitization of African American history, and that's something we just can't allow. I think. And I'm probably gonna get myself in trouble. But, if Putin is a war criminal, then so is Ronald Reagan.
Yep.
What happened in the 1980s in Africa through the CIA, the weapons, the landmines, the missiles, the Stinger missiles that were given to African people to kill other African people by the Reagan administration. And people, don't talk about it. So I'm just saying that the West and the East, the North and the South, I'm dividing up the world now, all have to use the same rules and not apply definitions and revisions of history to satisfy a particular political moment.
Yeah, guys, also in the news this morning, the governor of Texas said that his state will start busing and flying undocumented immigrants to the nation's capital, escalating his clash with the Biden administration over border policy and his plans to phase out pandemic-era restrictions. Governor Greg Abbott announced the busing as part of a broader crackdown amid rising illegal crossings and fears that restoring old policies will overwhelm border communities. Here's this immigration thing. Lauren, I don't recall, and James, this being such an issue prior to the Trump administration. What's going on?
What's going on is the Republican Party, for some reason, likes to use human beings as political tools, actual human beings in this case, when you're shipping people on a bus to prove some political point. And frankly, unless you're American Indian or African American, your ancestors came over here somehow as immigrants in some way. I know they don't want to get into that because we're doing CRT, but I'm not sure what the point of this is. But it's what the Republican Party does best: culture wars and the other, trying to effectively make immigrants into the boogeyman, that whole thing. So I guess that's what it is. Is it policy? No, it's spectacle.
Yeah, absolutely. James, I know you've weighed in on this topic before. Let's hear your thoughts on it as well.
I don't know what is going on with Greg Abbott. I don't know what's going on with Ken Paxton. Ken Paxton is a lower elected official in Texas. I'm not going to even talk about that. I don't know what are these people doing? I mean, you want to talk about Mexican Americans, helping Mexican Americans, help Mexican Americans get better at education, help more of them get into TANF, help more of them get into higher education and get better jobs. Now, I mean, he's the governor of Texas. He's supposed to be trying to help Mexican Americans become more financially stable and more civically engaged, instead of talking about busing people to DC. I don't get Greg Abbott. I've never gotten Greg Abbott. And I understand what Lauren is saying, but that's even ridiculous for him. This is ridiculous.
What I think is the politics of racial division. It's the politics of polarization. When there are no issues, the Republicans create issues. It's the politics of diversion. Rather than dealing with the quality of life issues for all Americans, here the Republicans go off again. It's just like, remember how many months they spent on birtherism, how many months they spent on, they create these issues, and then what we have to be careful in the media is not to chase them down their own racist rabbit hole.
Right.
We're not following them down all these holes on this crazy journeys. They can stick their heads in whatever hole they want, but I think that we need to always rise above it and call the issues that should be debated in terms of public policy, those programs and those things, because as the economy now emerges out of COVID, there's some real questions now about the inclusion and diversity. And I think that while we just won a great victory this week with Ketanji Brown Jackson being on the Supreme Court, and they're going to have a big White House celebration today, the thing is, we got to keep pushing, and I think what Texas is doing is a signal that they're going to continue to create these false issues. This is 2020. I think Abbott feels that what they're doing now is going to help turn out their base in the 2020 election. And the question for us, what is going to turn out our base? I think any Black person who watched the Senate hearings, if they don't watch anything else all year, that ought to be enough to have a massive voter turnout. We need to march. I started to use another word, these white supremacists out of office. You can't do it if we don't vote.
There you go.
Well, James, you asked what's wrong with Abbott. Katrina says, what's wrong with Ted Cruz? That we could have a whole show on what's wrong with Ted Cruz, right, Lauren?
Good point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think, what we just saw was a great example yesterday of why voting matters, because without Reverend Senator Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff sitting in the United States Senate, Judge Jackson is off the table. Ketanji Brown Jackson is off the table if you don't have those two senators elected. And that all happened because of Stacey Abrams' strategy of voter turnout amongst certain constituencies, of course, that are on the Democratic side. And they made it happen in a state that they weren't supposed to make it happen in. So not only did he get, obviously help elect President Biden, but without those votes in the Senate, there is no Black female member of the Supreme Court.
That's right. Yeah.
A perfect demonstration of why voting matters.
Exactly.
Well, the return of Tiger Woods at the Masters did not disappoint, and perhaps the greatest golfer in history only added to his legacy, shooting a 1-under-71 and just 3 strokes off the lead as they head into day 2 in Augusta, Georgia. Tiger, of course, is coming off that horrendous car wreck that nearly cost him a leg or even worse. We are going to keep our eye out over the weekend, and who knows, perhaps Sunday evening, Tiger will walk off with another green jacket. So Tiger Woods is back. Dr. Chavis, I know you've been following that. James follows everything. So,
but again, we salute Tiger Woods. But for me, Tiger Woods never left. Keep a look at his record. It's a straight incline. Now, it was a little pause, but he has not dipped. And I think that it is a story. It's an African-American story. It's a people of African descent story, but it's also a story of humanity. And I think that the golf, the PGA Tour, the PGA of America, everybody will celebrate just not him playing, but how he's playing with excellence, with skill. I think the Woods you better look out for is his son.
Yeah.
And he's giving him the right training at the right time. And so I think you're going to see a generation of Woods golfers.
Yeah, well, it is, Lauren, James, is amazing to see him back playing at such a high level, coming off such a horrendous injury.
Yeah, he's such a great example of how, somebody in our group changes the game and changes the culture. Because without him there, they're not going to get those ratings. They're not going to get the same gate. They're not going to get people's attention. I watched golf just because of him. I could care less about golf before he showed up. And I used to just watch just because of him and learned a lot about golf just watching him. I was not a fan of golf. I wasn't a player. I wasn't anything. And I'm sure there's a lot of other people out there who are like that.
Oh, yeah.
And his story, which we thought was just going to be him rolling over everybody and beating Jack Nicklaus's records, which he still has a shot at doing. Mm-hmm. His story has now become a comeback sort of redemption story as well, right? So all rolled up into one. And it's just amazing to see, even, in 2022, of course, a virtually all white sport with this person that comes along and just busts the doors open. See everybody cheering for him and everything else. And now the accident, now he's coming back from that. It really is completely incredible. It's a unique story that in a sport that we had not dominated in until he showed up in this way. It's amazing.
And he's opened a lot of doors, as you would
Mhm.
expect, on the golf course as well as off the golf course with his Tiger Woods Foundation. And one of the things that we were able to find out about him in recent months, in recent years, but certainly in recent months, was that the majority of the charity work he does goes unreported by design. He does not want any press whatsoever for all the charity work he's done in helping young people of color into the game of golf, whether they want to play, whether they want to work in golf. And there's a lot of opportunities in golf, James.
You know, it's remarkable we're talking about Tiger, because I was reading a Yahoo Sports article on him this morning, and it made it seem like these powerful billionaires and powerful people who are at Augusta parted the way as he was walking through the green. And I think that's a powerful symbolism as to the contribution that he has made to the game of golf, period, not only as an African American, but period. And it goes back to your point, Stacey, about how he's bringing people of color more into the game. You know, Lauren made an interesting thing. She said, you know, I wouldn't be watching this if it wasn't for him. A lot of us, I'm going to kind of skew that a bit in terms of me, because I am somewhat interested in business. That's why I wanted to learn golf. I'd rather watch football, but I want to watch golf because this is the game where a lot of business deals are made.
Right.
And you prefer to eat at Denny's, right? I want to say hello to Roberta McCartney. She's watching from Harlem, New York, of all places. We love Harlem, one of the best places in the world. And look, Dr. Chavis, here's something else to celebrate. Next month, let it be known, we'll be celebrating. We'll give you the day soon, but it's 300th episodes. That's a big deal.
Wow.
So we'll talk more about that soon. But Monday, please join us Monday. We hope to have Lauren back on Monday. We certainly look forward to having James. A special report on Monday about the Black judges of the Supreme Court, from Thurgood Marshall to Ketanji Brown Jackson. Join us for a very special Let It Be Known. Thank you so much for watching. Everybody have a safe and fun weekend if you can, and we will see you on Monday.